This is Ego Proctor. Let me just make sure that I can hear what I'm doing. There we go. I've been having some problems with the way Windows. Whenever I turn on this easy vid creator, it screws with my sound a little bit. Okay, so I'm having to re-film this because of that specifically, that problem. All right. So this is my Patreon page that I built. Whatever, it's here. And I don't know where it's going to go. The working title, as I said, is Enlightenment for the Modern Age. You can become a patron, which is where that screen was when we first turned it on. $1 a month is the minimum. And you can type in whatever you want, $50, $5, but less than $1 it won't let. I'm just trying to get to 100 patrons, find out how long that takes. And there's opportunities for me to move to a different area where I can have access to some good healing stuff and technology, and generating environments. All right, so, but between now and that now, this is the first episode, and so I talk a little bit about Mind Mup, and it's here. So I've started documenting the sources that I discussed in the first video with the links, right? If you come in here and use this, then you can collapse and expand and play with things. And I've relabeled what these videos are, and the links to Renz's website and to his books page. So I am expanding the mind map. Today I'm going to talk about the history of science and why it is that we should question the narratives we've been given by history and the state. Anyway, so you can see Dr. Richard Carrier. Later in this, he gets into so he gets into trimming the toolbox and instruments and coming up with mathematical laws, which is kind of a joke. But repeatable experiments are good. This is still kind of a myth that plagues science. As I've talked about in other posts I've made in videos, language in mathematics has no intrinsic meaning, so you can't make laws out of it. Those are abstract systems that are used for people to train each other to communicate, but they don't have any direct correlation with the phenomenal world. And so this is an illusion. This is the myth that fills your mind with things that don't actually make sense. And it's the source of cognitive dissonance. Okay. So yes, you can have verified empirical premises, but you need to also look at what instruments you're using and what kind of experiments you're using to then discuss the empirical premises and what are they saying with their mathematics and their descriptions. And there's nothing good that ever comes from consensus of experts if this doesn't make sense. And since that's meaningless, this is meaningless. It's just the way the mind works, right? It's just kind of cognitive hijacking. And so we move into other areas of research. So this guy was a lot of fun to research. Dewey B. Larson came up with a very novel theory of the universe. It's called the reciprocal system of theory, and in it he talks about the entire universe of motion. He goes very deep into why you shouldn't believe in atomics and subatomic particles, and then he gets into his universe of motion. He has 3 books that came out of this: Nothing But Motion, Basic Properties of Matter, and then the Universe of Motion. And so Nothing But Motion, and it's all it's like a philosophical treatise on science. And so in chapter 8, he starts talking about how to deal with, well, what are we seeing in that tiny universe if all we're using is motion? And this kind of stuff was mostly, some of that was corrected by some of these guys who have gone back in and re-looked at Larson's work and improved upon it. And they're saying it's verified scientific knowledge, whatever. They're creating their own dogma. We're all about dogmas. That's what humans do. Language has no meaning unless you give it meaning. And so what they're doing is, unless we can observe these phenomena, all this doesn't mean anything. But at least this is a new set of concepts to point us at a different way of learning to observe the phenomena. And so he's getting into whatever he's getting into, Dr. Ronald Satz. I haven't gone through all this. It's not interesting to me at this point. Another guy who did some interesting work, some very novel work, is a guy named Dale Pond. So he has this video here where he talks about a guy named John Ernst Worrell Keeley. Now, so Keeley's important because he taught us about sympathetic resonance, and that set off Tesla. And for that, we need to go to Eric Dollard and his energy synthesis work. This is the good one, right? About 7 hours long. And it's going to discuss all manner of goodies about science. Okay, so Eric Dollard goes really deep into these issues that we've got in science. And so he talks about how electrical science was challenged coming into this same era when the heavy side was working. And so if we get deep into the ideas of it, it's because the Rockefellers and other groups wanted to use oil as a fossil fuel. On my Facebook page, there's a video from a man who worked for the railroad companies for years with the energy stuff, and and what we end up with is electrical science being replaced with mathematics and meaningless gibberish. As if we look here, this is where I started last time. I may have to just kind of work my way through this. I'm tired right now. I've already done this once and it didn't record any sound. Okay, so what happens when you wake up and look? And so I wrote this nice long article. You get Cheryl Atkinson talking about corruption in science. I talked to you about how to use Wikipedia talk pages, and you'll be able to look and see how they're creating cognitive dissonance to shut people down. And why it is that they use the math the way they do to create relativity, the Big Bang, and dark matter. It's just these persistent lies that we can't get rid of as long as we play the game the way they want to play. We have to go after the cognitive dissonance. If you don't go after the cognitive dissonance, then you're never going to get rid of this bullshit science that Eric Dollard and others have been talking about. So this may end up just being a short video because I'm just really tired. So one of the books that Eric Dollard is talking about is here, called A History of the Theories of Ether and Electricity. And it'll take you through from the age of Descartes to the close of the 19th century. This is all the primary experiments and ideas that led to the formation of the idea of an ether and technology. So let's look up another book that Dollard was using. The Music of the Spheres by Jamie James. This is a really fun book. So this talks about the evolution of science from ancient Greece through Einstein. This guy's kind of a worshiper of Einstein because nobody's really told him that Einstein's full of shit. And but it does take you through Pythagoras and then the Music of the Spheres into Platonic thought and through all the way through the first century, through the Middle Ages, and into the Enlightenment, and through guys like Kepler, Newton, and others, and shows how essentially most of Western science up until the 20th century was largely based on Pythagorean ideas of the universe, which Eric Dollard on his website gets back into with one of his books that he wrote. I don't know. Let's see. Eric Dollard, and I know this isn't the right name, but so this will be linked from his main webpage, but whatever. So it's the power of ether is related to music and electricity. So this gets into Pythagoras, and this gets into music theory and electricity, and how the vibratory frequencies of Bach era music is very closely related to what's happening in the ether and in electricity. And so it's they want like $50 for it. He's got a video presentation and a book. And he's getting really old. He just had like a heart attack or something. Some kind of problem. He's in the hospital. This guy's running out of juice. He doesn't care anymore. Nobody's running to support his work. an amazingly erudite guy, especially about electricity. Other things, who knows? Who knows what this guy's gotten into? He primarily just wants to talk about electricity and doesn't play too much publicly with conspiracy theories. Okay, so we have Dale Pond. He did John Keeley, which helps us support an understanding of where Eric Dollard gets his stuff from Tesla about. And here's Eric Dollard's talk, Origin of Energy Synthesis. Not enough people are watching this. And he draws heavily off of books like this, and there's hundreds of books that are involved in this. I mean, there's gigs of books that people have collected to support Eric Dollard's work and show what's going on. Okay, so we move into something closer to the modern era, and we get Anthony Peratt. And so Anthony Peratt is who helped us really understand the solar flare evidence that I had talked about in this first video. And in the mind map, I've got the two papers that talk about it. Okay, so what he's talking about is that he's going against and challenging the stuff that Thunderbolts is talking about with the electric universe. So Thunderbolts is trying to push this electric universe paradigm. And that's primarily this guy. Here we go. So Wal Thornhill from Australia became an independent philosopher and thinker. Good, yay for him. But they're turning his work into a dogma because they want to support David Talbot's view of the concepts of planetary alignment. So we want to look at the planetary alignment issues. We go to mythopedia.info, which is Rens Vandersloos's page. He does post on Thunderbolts just because there's very few places that he can put these ideas out. He says right here, I don't want to talk about Velikovsky or Talbot's Saturn myth because while they were inspiring to the project, they don't seem to have anything meaningful in them. The information's just not in the mythology or in the physics. As far as I can tell. Now, there's entire groups of people that are just married to this idea, right? They don't want to let it go, and they're never going to let it go. It's just like people trying to prove that the Bible is like every word of the Bible is the word of God. So these are some very, very big questions in science. And so what are we looking for when we investigate this? We're looking for patterns of thought and patterns of activity, again, like I said. So he's talking about inductive reasoning and deductive reasoning. He's talking about the history of science from his point of view, which you can clarify when you get into like Richard Carrier's work, but as a big overview, he's not far off from the idea that the patterns of science go from inductive reasoning to deductive reasoning to inductive reasoning to deductive reasoning. So, and inductive reasoning and deductive reasoning both start with some kind of observation of the world, and it will usually move into experiments and then a hypothesis. However, to really get into inductive reasoning, you're bringing in very few assumptions about what the phenomena is. You're letting the measurements and the tools and the observations give you a clue to what the phenomena is you're looking at. And then from that, you build your theory through repeated experiments and confirming the phenomena with itself, and then trying to find a way to make mathematics and then language just to describe it, usually first with language. So but deductive reasoning is starting with an idea before you go in to observe the phenomena. And then you may take recordings with that phenomena, but you are using the ideas to build new ideas, to build new ideas, to build new ideas. And that is a system that continually changes to help support the primary concept that people had built in their minds before the phenomena were observed, so that even new observations aren't going to change the underlying concept. Even if those new observations would falsify the theory, you're just then going to change the mathematics or change some of the philosophical descriptions so that your underlying belief system is safe. And that's what's going on with the Big Bang and dark matter and relativity. It's just a mess. Now, I did like the first video that I made, but there was no sound. That sucked. And I'm tired. So this is what we're going to get. Biofield tuning. This is interesting, about using tuning forks to map the energy field around the body, which is a bioplasma, which is just a, they call it subtle energy. And what it is that subtle energy is, I haven't dug into enough to be able to give you a coherent description, whatever. So it's just energy at a frequency that's beyond what we're normally able to perceive with our five senses. And it would be something that we perceive more intuitively or with a different set of sensory organs that we don't normally pay attention to. And right, you got lots of people supporting this, and now I'm trying to come into it to kind of help, because I understand why it is that the science that even assholes like this believe in is wrong. Assholes because everybody's an asshole. So Eric Dollard, a wonderful asshole, that is describing longitudinal waves and of Tesla. Helps support this, because this is longitudinal waves. Sound is longitudinal waves. And since bioplasma is an electromagnetic phenomena, you're going to want to use some kind of electrical longitudinal transmission instead of using sound. That way we can actually map what's in it. And that is a project I would like to work on. And so this is sympathetic resonance, which will get into this, and which will get into this, right? So all these things are linked. Reciprocal system of theory, plasma. So they're still talking about particles, but if we get into here, he actually does the work that falsifies quantum mechanics completely and shows that you don't need photons and wave and particle duality and all that bullshit, by rebuilding the experiments and showing that the experiments coming out of the early 1900s were just flawed. And so he's showing us what's going on. So you can get into this. I don't want to discuss it too much. I'm not big onto the into the mathematics, but I've got friends of mine on Facebook that are going through the mathematics, going, this guy's onto something big. But it's just a piece, right? All these people are onto just pieces, just like he's just into a piece, and Dollard's into a piece, and Peratt's into a piece, and he's into a piece about the mythology. And so all these different pieces are there. And so I'm just collecting the evidence and saying, look at this. Look at what's going on. This guy's into something. The electric comet is his claim to fame. A lot of the rest of the stuff he wants to build, I don't know that I'm going to get behind. But me getting behind it doesn't do anything for anybody else. So I don't care. Paradigm destruction, man. There's nothing to get behind. Anyway, so it's going to be in this mind map. I'm going to keep building this. And so these videos are just going to be me talking about the evidence so you can see my thoughts on it, and then say dig in, dig in, dig in. And then there'll be a community section, or there is a community section here on the Patreon page. And I may have to move this. We'll see. There's other places to put some of these things. And so when you become a patron, then you can make a post and you can suggest things for me to talk about. I would love to see people eventually, slowly coming in, becoming patrons. To become a patron, you click on the link. I think I've shown you this. It starts at a minimum of $1, and then you can go up. But I'm putting lots up there for free just so people can see it, because it's better to get people educated than it is to try to get people's money. So I do want to move, and I'm gonna have to move regardless if I have enough money to move or not. So having money would definitely help me move to a place where I can do some of this research, and start producing more things for people to heal and to kind of get the world at least a little bit further out of the mess it's in. Okay, so it can start at $1 a month. You click and then you can type in whatever amount you want, right? You can add some extra zeros at the end of it, but a dollar is the shortest it goes. You add your credit card, you register with Patreon, whatever. You can turn it on, turn it off, but I do it as a month instead of a post, just so that people aren't. Yeah, I mean, because if I post 10 times a day and you decided that you wanted to pay me per post, then you're paying a lot of money. Anyway, so to kind of cut this one short, I've shown a lot of this evidence, and so if you want to look into what's happening in science, you come here and you read what happens when you wake up and look. And so here's Cheryl Atkinson talking about the scam of Big Pharma. And then you come down further and you got, and then there'll be the scam of Big Pharma, again, controlling the big publishing houses so that all peer review has to be, is censored by the pharmaceutical companies, who is really just big oil. And then there's books about money, and there's concepts about why the entire why everything that you're dealing with, that you've been taught with language, is just a lie. Noam Chomsky started World War I. Talks about how the bankers started World War I and World War II. I've got a link to that interview in here, and then you can follow that to get more information. And so this is what I'm doing. Ego Proctor is creating enlightenment for the modern age, and first you have to define why the modern age is just bullshit. Fuck this paradigm completely. Just fuck it. Go and find all the judges, all the police, and everybody, and just educate them. Would be one thing that would be amazing to see. People learning how to argue against the philosophy that people have been trained with, so they wake the fuck up. Just like I was riding my bike near the library the other day, and I told this policeman about democracy was largely invented by bankers in ancient Athens to control people, and that the bankers have never produced the money to pay the interest that they charge on loans, right? And so some of that evidence is in some of these articles, and it'll come out eventually into this mind map. All right, so mythopedia.info, you can look at different people and how they've been treated by the scientific community that he picks out. You can look at evidence of global myths, talking about the same patterns of ideas, looking for whatever, right? Gods in the flesh, whatever. So he has some really interesting short little articles full of all kinds of good information in here that'll give you pictures of the artwork, and all this relates to the plasma physics of Peratt. And it is just good. It's just fun the way he pulls it all together. All right, so like I said, I'm tired. This video is not going to be as good as the others, but I'm not going to filter it or edit it. This is just where I am. And thanks for coming by. Remember to check out the keep up with the mind map to see what I'm adding, and you can chase it, and then I'll be organizing it into areas of research. And I mean, there'll eventually be just like thousands of fucking sources in this. When as I progress, it may take 6 months or a year to get there, but this thing is going to be so busy with sources that it's just going to be mind-boggling for most people to see what I have spent my time digging into. So thank you guys. If you like what I'm producing, and even though this video may or may not be the most energetic, I am doing what I can to give you some information about this. It is now, 1:18 in the morning. I filmed the other one at like 11, and it took some time to process for me to find out there was no sound in it. Blah. Okay, so I've gotten one patron and so I'm making $1 a month. That's the total income I've got right now. Most other avenues of trying to make money have not been working. And so I'm going to move to a place where I can get some healing and some focus, and then I can help change the world, right? So there's people that are trying to help me, like on Facebook and other groups. They're starting to come in. They want to see this thing that's in my mind take form, so other people can start to use it. So that's what I am going to be building. All right. So thanks, guys. Keep up with Ego Proctor. I call myself the heavy metal Buddha just for fun. You don't have to believe I'm a Buddha, but you're going to get the heavy fucking metal anyway. So pay the fuck attention. Let's grow the fuck up and save this fucking planet. Loves.